Hi there, Mark Beal here, adventurer in life. Love well, live free, life adventure. I'd like to talk a little about the history of attachment. Dr. John Bowlby is the father of attachment. He became a psychologist in 1925. His supervisor was Melanie Klein, the mother of play therapy, and she said, go down to the local, jail, there's 41 thieves there, and figure out what made them move into criminal activities. And he came back and he said, there's something really profound about a relationship between a baby or child and their caregiver in the first few years of life, because all 41 thieves came from broken families. There were only two schools of psychology at this time, Freudian psychology and developmental psychology by Dr. Erik Erikson. So he began going on this journey of trying to kind of help people understand that there is a profound relationship between an infant and a caregiver that births empathy, connection, reciprocity. I do for you, you do for me, conscience, and it's profound in us as humans. That was later backed up in the mid-30s by Dr. Robert Harlow. He did an experiment with rhesus monkeys, and he put the bottle in one cage, and it had terry cloth, so softness was paired with nurture, and in the other cage he put the bottle just in a wire thing, and in the monkeys that had no softness paired with the nurture, they became antisocial and began eliminating each other, which backed up Dr. Bowlby's assertion. Our culture was really divided between genders at this time. Women had to march and fight for voting rights, which they got in 1920. They were fighting for more of a position, and unfortunately, men were not in a place to be able to give them that respect. And as World War II happened, and Dr. Bowlby is looking at trying to put together this idea that there's a profound relationship, women were also fighting for their individual sense of self-respect and freedom. World War II happened, so the men went off to war, and when they came back, Rosie the Riveter was saying, I'm not going to move over. And so at this time, there is a massive cultural conflict, right? 1950, Dr. Benjamin Spock is saying, when a baby is needing to cry, put them in a room, and in 20 minutes, they cry themselves to sleep. And that was his opinion at that time. Dr. John Bowlby was saying there's something that's incredibly important that takes place that creates our foundational humanity. And at that point, our culture was saying, women were saying, I don't want to be relegated to just a caregiver. Some women may want a career, some women may want to do a hybrid, some women may say, I want to be a stay-at-home mom. And so our culture at that point made a decision, and unfortunately that decision, paired with the fact that men came back from war with PTSD and the only definition for males was to be a provider, women generally felt that I don't want to accept that. And so Dr. John Bowlby's assertion, along with the creation of a newfangled thing called a TV, which became the babysitter, that created a very self-absorbed, narcissistic generation. And during the same time as TV was getting started, they were taught by running all these commercials that they had the right to kind of have whatever they wanted when they wanted. It was a time in our life of great productivity, and it wasn't until Camelot got destroyed when President Kennedy got assassinated, and that becomes a really fundamental piece of what happened in that generation. They didn't learn to grieve. They didn't know that there's 10 ways to handle emotional pain: run, hide, deny, avoid, distract, busy, addictions, control, dissociate, or embrace it. Hug the cactus. Unfortunately, that generation didn't. They kind of lost their compass point, their vision, their sense of direction, and they literally began to question all authority. So at that point, Black Americans began marching for independence and freedom, and unfortunately, that there was a lot of to all of this change, there was a lot of resistance. And Dr. Martin Luther King began marching. At this point, there was a movement on the part of this generation to take out prayer and Bible reading out of school, and it doesn't matter whether you're for religion or after, it set a moral compass for a generation and for Americans. Lying, stealing, cheating people are not exactly good ways to treat people. So that was taken out of the school system, 63, 64, 64, 65, and then during this time, the Tet Offensive in 1965 took place, which is Americans came back from Vietnam in body bags, and this is all on the nightly news. It very dysregulated, made crazy, substance abuse, drugs and alcohol. It kind of culminated in a couple of big things toward the end of that decade, where a Lieutenant Calley was accused of massacring a village, My Lai, and then on top of that, our National Guard soldiers fired on Kent State students. It made everybody question what was going on, and instead of learning to deal with it, learning to hug the cactus, learning to embrace the griefs and losses of one's life, they actually went to Woodstock in '68, took their clothes off, and had sex with everybody. Unfortunately, that created a problem. There were lots of babies, so we had to find a way to define a baby as a piece of tissue. Abortion was created in 1972, and the generation capped off the destruction of the foundation of American society in 1975 with no-fault divorce. And when you do all of that and take down agreed upon morals without replacing them, you exalt the self as the sole arbiter of decision making through a narcissistic lens. And that's kind of what has happened, I think. It's what I teach here. People can disagree with it or agree with it, but I'm moving toward a point where how do we recover from it?